Throughout my last 2 years as a full-time filmmaker, I've noticed a recurring skill that I've needed to have for multiple jobs. It's something that we often take for granted, but it is so very simple. And today we are talking about how to properly film an interview. What's going on, guys? So over the last few years, I found myself doing a lot of commercial work, just a lot of like corporate work in general. And overall, I've noticed a pattern that I didn't think I would be getting into, but every one of those videos, the foundation, like the core foundation, message, story, all of that is just built on interview footage of someone telling the brand story, someone conveying an emotion of how they feel. And it is my job to capture that footage and to make it relevant to the B-roll and the overarching story that we're creating. And it is vital that your B-roll not outshine your interview footage or vice versa, because you want them to feel like one cohesive story piece. So B-roll is important, but today we're gonna talk about how to properly film, how to properly light, the things I do, like everything from start to finish that I do for an interview. That's what I'm giving you today. All right, so for those of you who do not know, because I often forget there are new people who have never seen me before, my name is Chris and I'm a full-time filmmaker here in South Mississippi. I started doing video in 2013. I started off with weddings and then I slowly transitioned into corporate filmmaking, commercial work. I found myself doing some awesome story videos. It's just what I really love to do. And the great thing about doing all of that, the simplicity of story videos, basically for filmmakers, you're filming an interview, you're filming B-roll, you're smashing them together, and you're creating a story video. You can scale that so far and you can make so much money conveying people's story if you can do it effectively, because I've been able to scale from absolutely like nothing and just doing videos as a hobby into this being my full-time job, and I'm not having to worry about any other sources of income to pay rent, to pay for cars or anything like that. So I definitely recommend that this is a skill that you nail down. It is absolutely important and it is applicable to so many different aspects of filmmaking. So let's break down some recent things I've done, some recent story videos, recent interviews, and things of the sort. We're gonna start at the very beginning. The first thing I'm looking at when I walk into a room is the composition. I am searching for leading lines. I am searching for backdrops, potential props, things that can help make the composition of the overall video aesthetically pleasing, but also something that's not distracting enough to pull attention away from the person who's talking. Space is a big thing. Usually when I walk into a room, it's the first time I've been in that room. I don't really have time to location scout nowadays because some things are just happening so fast and you gotta be on your feet in the moment. So from the moment we press go, I am focused on what this is going to look like. To go along with my composition, I'm already thinking about lens selections. Since I shoot on the Sony FX3, which is a full frame camera, the lens selections that I usually go for is a 50mm for my straight on shot and an 85mm for my secondary. When I was filming with my Blackmagic, since they were crop censored, I would film 35mm for my straight on shot and of course 50mm for my secondary, because the Blackmagic is punching in 1.5 times. After I have established the layouts and how everything is going to look compositionally, I usually start with lighting. Lighting is absolutely important because a lot of people do this wrong. A lot of people just want to blast light and just kind of get everything evenly lit just so you can properly see. But that does not create a dynamic image. What we're trying to do is we're trying to stand out. So for the interviews that I've been doing, you're wanting to get your light opposite of camera. That is probably the simplest thing to remember, because you're wanting to film the shadow side of somebody's face. Most interviews are looking slightly off camera. So if I were doing an interview right now, I want the camera positioned on the shadow side of my face and I want the light to be elsewhere, because this side cool, you know, if you do it right, okay. But the shadow side helps with those dynamic lines and gives the person a little bit more character. To go alongside of that, I usually have a golden backlight. As you can see, creating this like rim and halo and separation from the background, I apply that in almost every shoot that I do. As long as I have the space for it, having a backlight for separation is key. Now that is usually the extent of most of the lights that I use for interviews. But for example, in this footage right here, I'm using a hair light to add a little bit of color to the top of a person's head because they have dark hair. And in this example, I'm blasting the light kind of towards my lens just to create a subtle flare, just to give the image a little bit more character. After I have established lighting and how everything is going to look, it gets real technical because now we're talking audio. There is one thing to remember with audio. Get your mic off your camera. If your mic is on your camera, you're doing it wrong. Just that simple. Invest in a boom mic. Right now, I'm currently using like a $15 boom arm. The microphone is right here off camera, and it is creating much better audio than if it was just right here where the camera is. Like, it is important to have your audio about 6 to 14 inches away from your subject, pointing towards their chest area, because you are just wanting to get crystal clear audio. Making the room as quiet as possible is important, so it may get a little hot, but you need to turn off the air conditioner. If you are wanting to have really good audio, investing in blankets. Here I have sound blankets. I actually took the comforter off my bed just to wrap it around my microphone to cut down on that reverb, that echo that we usually hear. And this simple thing helps me get better audio. When you are recording this audio to an external recorder in camera, you're going to want to set the sensitivity to where it's between -18 and -12 decibels. That is the best area to be in once you're going into post-production, because now you can normalize, now you have levels to play with, and you are most likely not peaking your audio source. After that, after I have established everything for primary audio, then we set up backups. I tend to use a lavalier mic right here in the subject's chest. I usually tape a mic to them, run a wireless lav pack to a secondary camera or a secondary recorder, because backup audio is key, because you never ever know when something may go wrong and you can't be relying on one audio source. After we have secured the audio, now it's time to add a little bit of spice. I tend to add sliders to my shots. Like, the slider movement makes the B cam insanely more interesting, because yes, you can have a stationary A cam and a stationary B cam and you can get by. If the framing looks dynamic and the lighting looks good, you're good to go. But if you want to stand out, incorporating a slider for your B cam footage or even your A cam footage helps it just pop. This allows me to have the interview footage serve as something more dynamic instead of having to always cut away to B-roll, to cut away mistakes or things like that. You get to have some dynamic slider movements. You get to add a little bit more of emotion, something that just kind of raises your production quality. Investing in a slider is something I wish I had done sooner, and I wish I had used more often, but man, is it really, really effective. Currently, I use the Edichrome Slider V5, I believe. Essentially, it is a nice compact slider that slides back and forth. It's very, very simple. And yes, it is something that I definitely believe you should invest in. If you're gonna splurge on something and you want one thing to take you over the top, get a slider. And after you have set up everything, after you've added your spice, you've had some dynamic lighting, you have double mic sources, now is the time for the interview process. This is one of the most important pieces because this is where you're actually going to get your content. Now, the interview is important because a lot of people don't know how to interview. It is vital that you stay absolutely quiet during the interview. It is important that you give the subject room to talk. You make them feel comfortable. You engage, you nod your heads, nonverbal agreements. Just stay with the subject and make them feel at home, because You want to pull out the most genuine pieces of information from someone. If you're creating a story video, if you create a video about why they're passionate about what they do, it is important to engage and be purposeful. I like to have my subject looking right off camera. So when I'm setting up cameras, I usually sit the interviewer right beside my main cam, but enough to look like it is intentionally looking away from camera, but not so much to where it feels disengaged from my audience. And yeah, that is pretty much it. That is what I keep in mind when I'm going into an interview process for a story video. That is what I keep in mind for talking head commercials. I've done a ton of those and it's important. The only difference is they're looking directly to camera because they're talking to their potential customer. And as I said, it is important to keep practicing the basics, because even though this is like the most simplistic thing you're going to do as a filmmaker, does not mean it is one of the least important, because capturing proper audio, properly lit interview footage to help the audience engage, these are the foundation pieces that you're going to build on to create your next story video. But with that all being said, that's all I have for you today, guys. So if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. And if you loved it, consider subscribing, because I'm gonna bring you more content just like this every week. So you guys stay safe, you're loved, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.